Okay, I think we'll get started. And as everyone logs on, thanks for joining us. We're so happy to have so many of you here with us tonight for our 2021 Senior Parent and Guardian Night. Hopefully, some of your students are also gathered around the computer. We welcome everybody to kind of join in right now. It's a beautiful night, so hopefully you're sitting out on your porch and enjoying. We wish we could be with you in person, but here I am in the auditorium to give you a little look at what that might feel like. So I just want to introduce all of our panelists who are here tonight, and then we'll get started into our program. I'm Fallon Ballasone. I'm the Director of School Counseling. And I'm just really excited that everyone's here joining us. I know it's only really the second day of school, so it's a lot this week. So thank you so much for making the time to come on. And I have Principal Sanchez here. You want to say hello? There he is. And we have two of our amazing school counselors who are going to be doing our actual presentation in a few minutes. We have Ms. Danielle Mooney-Chavez, and we have Mr. Brian Clyburn. So thank you both so much for presenting tonight and for being here. I think I speak for Mr. Clyburn and Ms. Mooney-Chavez when I say that we had such a fun day today doing scheduling, which you wouldn't think would be super fun. But the reason why it was fun today was because we were in this auditorium actually doing, phys ed scheduling with our 11th and 12th graders. So we got to see a lot of you, a lot of your students in person after, a long, long time. And even though we were all yelling at each other through the masks, trying to hear each other, we were just so happy to be back with our students and getting to see everyone like that. So we had a wonderful day. Hopefully you heard the same from your students. Mr. Sanchez, before I get too far into the program, did you want to say anything to everybody? This might be a good time now.
No, I'm just here to answer any questions that parents may have. I do want to say that this is the incomparable Ms. Ballasone and counseling department. They've been thrown a couple curveballs already the first couple days, have worked tirelessly, first meeting all of the freshman students in small groups during our presentation or some kind of like hybrid Monday that we did. Today, they registered, so many of our students who had just registered through the central office process, and now they're doing this in the evening. I just want to thank each of our counselors, but specifically, Brian and Danielle, who are here with us as well, and Ms. Ballasone. And I hope you do show them the brand new website that you've designed to just show all the great things that the counseling department does.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not forgetting the website tonight. It's happening. Unfortunately, I'm a little scared of WebEx and technology, so I'm not going to do a grand tour of the website live here, but I will be talking about it. So thank you for being here as well, Mr. Sanchez, and for supporting us in everything that we do. So we actually work with some really amazing community partners who normally would come to Senior Parent or Guardian Night and kind of stand up and speak a little bit about what they do and what their organization does before we get started into our program. So what they did tonight was just share some slides in hopes that we'd be able to kind of deliver the message to you all from them. So before we get started into our counseling specific program, I just wanted to share a little bit first about CHS Cougar Cares. I'm sure you've all heard of them and hopefully support them already. But if not, it's really important to know that this organization does so many things behind the scenes for our students and our families in need. If we have a family who needs groceries, they'll give us a gift card to go over to the house with the grocery gift card, things like that. They help us fund prom for our seniors, make sure everybody has a graduation gown, gets a yearbook, and can just participate in all those senior events, whether they can, afford the fee or not. So I really encourage everybody to visit their website. We do have the link here, and this presentation will be posted, so you'll be able to click right there. But it's easy to find, and I just really encourage you to get on there and hopefully support them. The more support that they get from the community, the more students that they can help. And I think that, they go above and beyond in so many ways that I don't even think they share that, we know about as a counseling department with their outreach to us, always asking if there's, students who could possibly use a little bit more here, or they heard about a family who's struggling in town. How do we think that, they can help support the family? So it's just an amazing organization. We're so thankful to them and everything that they do for our students. So I do ask you to please check out their website, and any support you can give would be so appreciated. We also work with our amazing Home and School Association. They have a great website, and encourage you to join their mailing list because honestly, that's where I find out what's happening. I look at the HSA email, I'm like, oh, that's happening. Great, I didn't know. So if you want to know what's going on with Columbia High School and things you have to remember to do, where to go for help, enroll in the Columbia HSA mailing list, and you'll be informed. So we also have our senior representative contact information here. So you are welcome to reach out to them directly. They've provided their personal email addresses here. So thank you. So if you have any questions, you can reach out directly to the HSA. And thank you for them. And lastly, the last third party here that we wanted to share some information from is our very own library. So here's some pictures of our old stacks here as the snapshot in the slide they shared, but they do so much more than work in, those old stacks in the library. They help our students access PowerSchool, Canvas, all of those must-have tools for being successful at Columbia High School. So they just asked us to please share some information again about how students and parents can access their PowerSchool if they don't know their login or get logged out or get any kind of funky message from PowerSchool. So they actually help our students directly with the student PowerSchool login. So the students can either go up to the library themselves during the day, or they can email our librarians. The email address is right there if they're having any trouble with their own PowerSchool credentials and logging in. For the parent portal, it is a little different. The librarians do not have access to that. So you do need to email parent portal help. This is also on the website, and it'll be here on the posted presentation. But if there's anything you need from PowerSchool, whether it's your login or you want to change the email you have and the contacts, anything like that that needs to be changed in PowerSchool from the parent perspective, you need to email parent portal help here. So this is just another reminder also about Canvas and how to access that, since of course that's how our students are getting their schoolwork, and using the Canvas calendar to know which assignments are due when. So it's really important that all the students are getting on Canvas every single day. They gave access here to a great website where students can log in to get access to some ebooks and databases, and here's their hours. So you can see that they're open late, which is nice. They're open after school. Stay open until 5:15. All right. So now we're going to move into the counseling portion of our presentation. And of course, can't let it get started without plugging our new website. Hopefully you all took a look at it. It's a work in progress, so you'll still see that some of the pages say, under construction or check back soon. Really excited to continue to work on it and build it out, and hopefully have it be a one-stop shop for any question that you are wondering at all. Of course, you can always reach out to your school counselor as well, but we're just hoping it's a place that kind of houses all the information in one spot and is easy to navigate. So we would love feedback. If you feel like there's something that you think should be on our website, I would love to hear so that we can build that out and post it on there for you. I do have the link here, but it's just the counseling page off the Columbia High School website. Also, make sure you regularly check the class of 2022 website. So this is the first year that the seniors have their very own website, and it's being maintained by Ms. Butler, the assistant principal for the 12th grade. So thank you, Ms. Butler. She was kind enough to make a counseling center page for me on there so that we can post our very senior specific counseling type things, like all the reminders about college applications, all that kind of stuff, on the class of 22 website on our own little page. So we also have a little home on there as well with very senior specific things. So make sure you check that out regularly. And another new fun update from the Counseling Center is just our big unveiling of our counseling annex. which is housed physically up in the library, but it's not just a physical space. It's almost a cloud where that houses all of our student supports that the counselor may refer a student to. So all the academic supports, tutoring, social emotional supports, groups, social worker, intern support, everything like that, all housed in one spot. Students can go up there physically at any time to the counseling annex in the library to get signed up for, a group, matched up with an intern, look at our calendar of workshops, sign up for a tutor. They can physically go up there, but of course they don't have to physically go up if they don't want to. We do have a Google form, which is on our website on the counseling annex page, where anybody, whether it be a student, a parent, the counselor, the teacher, Mr. Sanchez, anybody can go onto the Google form and request a certain kind of support for a certain student. So you would just go onto the Google Forms, give the name of your student, and say, you're interested in tutoring. Oh, you're interested in a new student group because you just moved here. Anything like that. So you can all go check that out. And of course, that's also still a work in progress as we build out our calendar and all the things that we're able to offer up there. So we're really excited about that. If you go onto our counseling center website, on the homepage, you'll see announcements, which will update every week, but you'll also see our calendar of events, which is really, really important to look at because that's where you'll see like everything that we offer all at once right there, including tonight that was listed on there, and a bunch of other stuff, some of which our counselors will talk about. So I just wanted to give a little update on what's going on with the counseling center. And then I'm going to be turning over our program to our counselors, but first just wanted to give my little 2 cents about this whole process for senior year and, the post-secondary planning process. I feel like it's such a fun time, such an opportunity for you to like bond with your child in a new way as you kind of support them in this venture and, start to take them out on college tours. I feel like they'll always remember that time that their parents took them around on these college tours and how fun that was together. And, I also recommend coming up with a weekly time where you all kind of sit down and talk about this. So maybe you all know that every Sunday night you're going to sit down after or before dinner and talk about college, and that, you promise not to talk about it for the whole rest of the week. But every Sunday night you're going to sit down and talk about applications and what's going on and everything like that. It gives your student a chance to kind of like rev up for that conversation, mentally prepare for it. And be ready to have it instead of feeling like it's a constant topic of conversation. So with that, I am really excited to introduce again Mr. Clyburn and Miss Mooney Chavez, who are going to take you through our program. So I'm going to turn it over now.
So good evening, everyone. I'm very happy and excited to be with you this evening, and particularly the college and career aspect of what we do. For me, is one of my most favorite things to do. So I'm very happy to be able to share this information with you this evening. So in the coming weeks, you'll be receiving an email from your student's counselor about what their graduation status is. And what that basically will map out is all the classes that they've met towards graduation so far. It'll also have the classes that they're taking this year towards graduation, any standardized testing information that is needed towards graduation. So all that information will be in that particular correspondence. And in the coming weeks, we will also be pushing out information regarding senior meetings, which we will be having with you and with your student. And at this time, we'll be talking about what your student's goal is once they leave Columbia High School, whether that be a 2-year college or 4-year college, whether that's a gap year, the military. These are all things that we're going to discuss. Next slide. So as I mentioned, at that senior meeting, we'll be going over something called the graduation audit. And as I mentioned before, it'll have all the information that your student will need to make sure that they're on the right track for graduation through this year. And then so also during this senior meeting, we'll be talking about the various different options that are available for each student, depending on what they feel like is the best path for them. So whether that's a 2-year college to pursue an associate's degree, if that's to pursue some type of post high school vocational program at the two-year college, whether that is going to the two-year college to transfer to a four-year school later on, that information will be discussed. We'll be talking about the four-year college application process, which many of you know is a little bit different from the two-year process. We'll be talking about things like letters of recommendation, and we'll be talking about SAT, ACT scores, and all those different things that go into applying to a four-year school. We'll also be discussing another post-secondary option, which is the vocational trade school route for students that are interested in doing things like HVAC or plumbing or being a mechanic or something else that might require some schooling after high school, but it may not necessarily require a college degree. And so those are some things that we'll discuss. So the military is another option. We do have, during the year, we have a liaison that we work with through the military, through the Navy and the Army, that will come in and talk to each of the students that are interested, and we go over that information. We'll have information regarding students who are interested in going right to work and what options that are available. And then there's also the gap year, which is in a lot of cases an organized and structured experience where students can take some time off, figure out some things that they might want to do during that time, whether it's volunteering or taking care of their mental health or whatever that might be for them. We'll also talk about that information. So those are the post-secondary options. Next slide. So the last 2 months obviously been process in terms of the college and career. So we are in a situation now where we've kind of the colleges have kind of gone back and forth with on-site visits to tour schools or virtual, and so that's going to be kind of an up-to-the-minute thing in terms of what each college is doing, particularly with the way that things are kind of spiking across the country. So these are some things that we'll talk about, and particularly in those senior meetings, we'll talk about that. A lot of schools are still what we call test optional, meaning that they will allow students to apply, whereas years ago, if you were applying to particular schools, you had to have standardized test scores from SAT or ACT, and they have allowed some schools have allowed students to be able to apply without that information and not be jeopardized in the application process. So that's another thing that we'll be talking about. And what will college be like in the fall? I have a nephew who was virtual at Rutgers last year. He did his classes at home, and this year he's on campus. So things are constantly changing and evolving. And at the time that we have our senior meetings, we'll be discussing, what things are going to be looking like at that point and possibly moving forward. Next slide. So one of the key things with getting ready for the college application process is really getting to know SCORE, which I believe is an excellent program that we've been using. I believe this is, I want to say, second year using it. It's very user-friendly. It's very intuitive. It's aesthetically pleasing, so it's a lot better than what we were using before. So one of the things that you want to start to do is review and score something called My Colleges. And this is a part of SCORE where it really warehouses a lot of information for students. So students who are interested in particular schools, as they're doing searching, they can, instead of having to continuously look up these schools each time, they can store these schools under where it says following. And so each time that they want to go back and look at that school, it'll be under following. As students get ready to apply to schools, they'll be clicking and dragging the school icon over to where it says add a college, and that lets their counselor know that this is a school that they plan to apply to. And certainly once they apply, they'll be dragging that icon over to where it says apply. So SCORE is really a program that allows the student to be able to warehouse all their information, allows them to be able to do some great research. But for the counselor, it's great because it also allows us to be able to follow what students are doing and make sure that we are supporting them in every step of that process. Be sure to make sure that you sign up for any virtual tours or information sessions, that certainly virtual tours and information sessions that the college may have, but also as well as the counseling department will also have representatives that will be meeting with our students to discuss, their colleges and universities and answer any questions that they may have. The other thing to look at is something on SCORE called our calendar. And so when students first open up SCORE, usually it's in the bottom right corner of the screen, and it's like a running calendar, and it just allows them to see like the different, it keeps track of deadlines, but it also allows students to be able to look at the different colleges and universities that are going to be meeting with our students, and allows them to be able to go on and schedule the appointments so that they can be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Next slide. So one of the things that we'll be discussing with you and your student at length is the college fit process. And there are basically 3 different types of levels where students can kind of, like, I guess, put their eggs in a basket, so to speak. So you have your reach schools, which are, so all this information basically is dependent on a student's grades, and in cases where schools are asking for test scores, their SAT and ACT scores. So you have your reach schools, which will take a few students with the student's SAT and GPA scores. You have your level schools, which will take many schools or many students with this particular SAT and grades. And then you have your likely schools, which will take pretty much all students or most students with the SAT and with the GPA that particular student has. So one of the things that we try to make sure students do when they are looking at their college list is to try to have as balanced a list as possible. So should students be applying to a few reach schools? Absolutely. But we want to make sure that students are also looking at schools that they know for 100% that they have a great opportunity to get into, and then schools that are like that fit right in their target area. Like they have the grades, they have the test scores, they have a pretty 50% chance of getting in. And so we don't want students to have their choices be too top heavy with all reach schools. Next slide. So there's a few different ways that students will apply to particular schools, and it really depends on what the school uses. So some schools use something called the Common App, which is basically, for most of these applications, it is a application that a student can use to apply to multiple schools. And the Common App is probably the oldest of the bunch. And so it allows a student to, it has a main part, and the student fills out the main part. And then there are little supplemental parts for each particular school, where that school might ask particular questions based off of what their admissions criteria is. So you have the Common App, you have the Coalition application, which is similar. It's a little bit newer than the Common App, and then you have the Common Black College application, which is basically like the other two, but it focuses on students that are applying to HBCUs. And then lastly, you have the, depending on the college, they may have their own website and may not subscribe to the Common App or the Coalition application. So what the student will use will depend on, what school that they're applying to. They might end up doing the Common App, they might end up doing the Coalition, they may end up doing both. If they're applying to HBCUs, they may also end up doing that one. So the combination will depend on where the student's applying. Next slide. So one of the first things that we want to try to do in the college application process is, at this level, deadlines are everything. So it's very important that students understand which deadlines they have to be able to make sure that they follow so that they can apply to the school that they're interested in on time. So some of the schools have early deadlines, either early action or early decision. And these are important because these are deadlines that are earlier than the regular decision process. And for students to either if they have their eye on a particular school that they feel really strongly about, and they want to apply to that school early, and that's a binding decision, or if they are interested in applying early action, some schools may have stipulations for certain scholarship programs where students may have to apply early. They want to make sure that they're really, really cognizant of that, and planning their time and planning their resources so that they can, if they wish to apply to any of these schools early, they have the time to do that, and also the time for other people to support them to do that. As Ms. Balason mentioned before, having these weekly conversations on whatever day that you decide that you want to do it, and just making sure that you and your student are, communicating about what these deadlines are, and really helping them to understand and try to be able to put together realistic timelines. This is going to be one of the busiest times of their young lives right now, because they're doing homework and papers, and they're playing sports, and they're visiting colleges, and they're doing clubs, and there's so many things that are going on. We want to make sure that we are putting them in the best possible position to be able to apply to the schools that they want to apply to without making themselves crazy in this process. And of course, the biggest time stealer for all of this is the college essay. So as soon as the student can get started, I think the better, even if it's just putting together brainstorming or rough drafts, or sitting down with you and maybe going over some ideas. It's better to put that work in now and do it slowly over time than to try to, when you get closer to the deadline, it gets to be a lot more stressful to do that. Next slide. So the college application process and the essays, particularly for the Common App, you generally have the standard essay through the Common App that the student will pick they'll pick a prompt, and they'll do an essay based on the prompt. The other thing that the Common App has is something called the supplemental essay, and that's depending on the school that the student applies to. In addition to that Common App essay that's standard with the application, they may have to do something called the supplemental essay, which is specific to that particular school. So students want to make sure that they have enough time to be able to write a rough draft, do some edits, have some people look it over, and be comfortable with the essay that they plan to turn in. Next slide. So this screen highlights a couple of things. One is on the Common App. If you look at the toolbar down the left side, it has the different schools. And sometimes when you open those schools, that's where you will find the different types of applications. The other thing that's here is something called the FERPA release authorization, which is important because it authorizes us to be able to release information about your student to the school, meaning transcripts and letters of recommendation and things like that. So that's very important to make sure that the student does the FERPA release authorization as soon as they begin to get onto the Common App. So with the essay, it's very important that this is your student's opportunity for them to be able to tell the reader of the application who they are. There's some things that we can figure out from the transcript and looking at grades, but this is the opportunity for the reader to find out, who your student is, what they're about, what their interests are, what they feel like they can bring to campus in the fall. And sometimes some of us have a difficult, myself included, being able to really brag about ourselves and the things that we're doing and we've been a part of, but this is the time for your student to be able to do that. And we'll be pushing information out in the coming weeks about college essays, application workshops that we'll be doing going forward.
Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay, panelists? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Awesome. So I just wanted to reintroduce myself again, Dana Mooney Chavez. And on the way over here, it dawned on me that I actually presented to your seniors the freshman presentation. So here we are, and some of you may remember my children were there because I was waiting for my husband to pick them up, and they just ran crazy. So you might hear them again tonight. I can't mute them. I just thought it was poetic to, sunrise, sunset. So Mr. Clyburn, he talked about kind of the pieces of the college application process that are on the student. So, right, the actual application, the essays, the supplements. Well, there are other parts, moving pieces of the application process that you're depending on others. So that can get a little bit, stressful, but I promise everything will work out. It always does. And SCORE actually makes it a little bit easier to manage, which is nice. So the first piece that I'll talk about is the counselor letter of recommendation or the counselor evaluation, which is separate than a teacher letter. Okay, so that's a big confusing thing sometimes. You'll see, oh, the college will only take 2 letters of recommendation, but that is separate from the counselor letter. Okay, now in order for the counselor to, we're automatically going to do it. You don't have to ask us to do it, but in order for it to be nice and healthy, we really depend on those surveys and SCORE. So, there's one for you too, parents, not just the student one. So I find that my best letters are kind of a mix of, what the student puts in for their questions. I was on NHS baseball team. I, worked in a summer camp. And then also the way in which you as a parent speak about your child is pretty awesome. And then our kind of time with them to make this perfect trifecta of, who they are off the numbers, so to speak. Okay, so really important, if you haven't done that already, kind of nudge yourself and student to get that done. We will also not only send the counselor letter, but also the transcript. So, right, probably kind of one of the most important pieces of this puzzle. The transcript is going to have all of the grades and courses from 9th through 11th grade with the weighted and unweighted cumulative GPAs on there. You will not see any kind of senior grades on that transcript if you're kind of applying on the earlier side, and we'll get into that in a minute. So you'll just see the senior year courses, which is a factor. Okay, so colleges do look at that. So I just wanted to point that out. One of the most important pieces of information you'll hear, what everyone is saying is important, but one of the things that's so important is when you need, or your student needs, a transcript or a letter of recommendation sent to these schools, there's not a magical button. Okay, so, and please don't email us, or please don't ask us in the hallway. The proper way to do this is really by putting the colleges, and you'll see a screenshot in a few slides, the screenshot of the colleges in the applying or the applied column. So on SCORE, by having those colleges in either the applying or applied column, it triggers our system to say, hey, we need our transcripts and letters sent to these schools. Okay, so that is basically for our counselor letter and transcript. We do ask that you give us a 2-window notice buffer time. We are absolutely insane during this season. COVID just has made it worse because nobody knows what's going on. So I sent out 650 application packages last year. That's not counting emails. That's just counting SCORE packages. So for us to have a senior decide, October 30th, that they are going to apply for a November 1st deadline and they need a letter in a day or two, or they need everything done in a day or two, it's not that we don't want to do it. It just logistically sometimes can be kind of a nightmare. So definitely have a 2-week buffer for that. Okay, and just so you know, there are some colleges that do ask the student to report their own transcript. That's totally fine. That's usually called an SRAR, self-reported academic record, and that's usually the big state schools like Rutgers, Penn State kind of thing. Okay, so we talked about the counselor letter and the transcript that will be sent through SCORE. Also, what will be sent through SCORE is a teacher letter of recommendation. So this is the piece that does have to kind of be asked. Okay, it's not a given. And we did tell our now seniors, but then juniors in their junior meeting, that it's a smart idea to start thinking about and maybe asking teachers by the end of the year, what's the magic number? I don't know, maybe 2 to 3, I would say. Definitely 2, sometimes 3. And first ask by email, just out of courtesy, or if we were in the building together, some of us drop in and ask in person, but definitely follow up with an email. But then if the teacher agrees, then there is a formal way on SCORE to request them that way. And you'll see a screenshot at that in a minute. Also, it's possible that your teacher that you want to write a letter is not on score. That's okay. So basically what the teacher can do, because we really, you know, we talked about the whole FERPA waiver, we really don't encourage students to see the letters of recommendation. So we can have either, sometimes the teacher wants, and they say, hey, you know what? Give me the address. The student usually, like snail mail, can send the letter to the colleges, but the student should provide like envelopes, self-addressed, stamps, and all that good stuff. Or an email, the teacher can write an email to admissions, download a PDF letter, version of letter, or they can send it to us and we can actually upload it for them in SCORE. Okay, so it will get there, even if the teacher is not on SCORE. Or if the teacher does want you SCORE, but you can't find it, or your student can't find it when you go in there, just let your counselor know. And that's kind of like a technical thing we can take care of. Another popular question, retirees, right? Miss Dodd, oh, I want Miss Dodd to write my letter. Fine, that's cool. We need to ask her first, okay? And a lot of the students who have mentioned this, you know, have a personal email, or if you want a personal email, you can ask us and we can see if we can get it. If the teacher agrees, the same kind of thing applies. They can write the letter, send it to the counselor, and we can upload it into SCORE and send on their behalf, okay? There's also something, that has to do with like outsider letters of recommendation. So I'm a coach, or I'm a boss, or I work in the church, kind of character references. Those are called outsider letters of recommendation. Those are okay. I think it really have to check the college website to see what they'll take in terms of letters, okay? And the same thing goes for that. A coach can send me the letter, I can upload it into SCORE and send it on the behalf. That's not a teacher letter. That's called an outsider recommendation, kind of like a character reference, okay? And I do see some great questions, so thank you, Ms. Balisone, and then we'll make sure that we catch everything as we go. Okay, and the same thing with the teachers. Definitely give them a 2-week buffer, because everybody is crazy. Everybody is crazy. And you know, October 15th is like the cool and upcoming new deadline, which is right around the corner. So that gets here like that, you know. So yeah, pretty crazy. So Ms. Balsam, can you go to the next slide so I can show them the screenshot? So here is where your senior will do most of their trench work in SCORE. So when you log on, you'll see that it has college search, which is like, you know, what Mr. Clyburn was talking about. You kind of peek around and look, and that's what you kind of should be playing around with last year. You know, here's what I want out of a school. The middle column, my colleges, is where all the good stuff is going to happen really this year. So here's where, and I love the visual on SCORE compared to our old program. It just has these nice columns. So the following, that's kind of like, hey, I'm thinking about it, heard about it, I'm learning more about it. It's my maybe list. Your school, if you know the senior is applying there, it cannot stay in this column, okay? Or else it will not come on our radar. So this is what I was talking about. It needs to be moved either to the applying column, which is like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm in the middle of it. Or what I love, which is the third column, which is like the done bucket, I call it. Like, okay, I finished, put it over there. Either one of the middle or the right column will trigger our system to send the transcript and letters of recommendation over. And same thing for the teacher letters. So if you click on, you'll see the application documents. There's that blue. Yep. If you click on that, maybe we go to the next slide. So yep, and that's what it will pop up. Now, if you're senior, and again, this is after your student has asked the teacher kind of informally, will you write my letters? And if the teacher agrees, then we go on this step. Now, if your student has not asked or formally requested any teacher on SCORE yet, there won't be names here, okay? It will just say like request a recommender, and the names will be gone. Once you click request a recommendation, they type in the teacher's name and it will come up, okay? And again, if it doesn't come up, just check in with the teacher, because either they don't use SCORE, or maybe they're like a newer teacher and they're not on SCORE yet, and we can totally get them in there, okay? So that's really important. The next slide, oh, this is kind of like how you can do the movement, and also how you can clean up the list. Something that I have to remind you, because some of you all might have seniors that from past years that when you use Naviance, so the Common App, right? So the application or the platform where we do the actual application, it used to sync or talk to Naviance. So we would know what schools the seniors were applying to, because their actual application platform dumped it into Naviance. SCORE doesn't talk to Common App. SCORE doesn't talk to anybody. So SCORE kind of stands alone. So it's so important that if your senior is applying to a school, it has to be on SCORE, okay? Because if it's not on SCORE, and more importantly, it has to be in the applying or the applied columns, if it's not there, we're not going to know it exists, okay? So that is so important. And don't fret, because like Mr. Clyburn said, we are going to start doing our senior meetings, which are really just reminders and really digging in the more minutia of our junior meetings, and we will go all over this technical stuff, okay? Because I know it is so much right now. Okay, just as a sidebar, so obviously there's kind of like different satellite pieces to applying to college, and these are some kind of special programs, if you will. So for instance, if you are applying to a school in New Jersey, there's something called EOF, or Equal Opportunity Fund, Educational Opportunity Fund, I think it's called. And it's basically an acronym just to kind of level the playing field, so to speak. So it's based off of the strength of your household, and it will say, hey, you know what? I know maybe, your income reflects like, hey, maybe we didn't, have like so many resources. So, in order to make it fair, maybe like a college might say, okay, a normal GPA that we would want our applicants to have to be accepted is maybe a 4.0. But if you apply EOF and you have like a 3.75, hey, we'll give you a look, okay? And it might include, or definitely will include, a summer kind of bridge program, enrichment classes. They'll get a lot more mentoring. So this is a great program if you're eligible financially. And definitely if you are a free reduced lunch family, this is something you want to just click yes for. It's better to click yes and get told no than just kind of skip over that box, okay? So please look out for that. If you are an athlete and you're interested in recruitment, please familiarize yourself with NCAA. They have their own machine, and Mr. Clyburn is the expert for NCAA, so you can bother him as opposed to me on that one. But they have to make sure the courses are legit and all that good stuff. So that's also something kind of a sidebar, but still connected to the college application process. All right, Ms. Bellstone. All right, so here are the timelines in which we can apply. So we have what I like to call the early bird special. And those are two different ways to apply to school, but they both have similar deadlines. So there's some similarities, but there's one very big difference, okay? And what I'm talking about is early decision versus early action, okay? So early decision, or ED as it's known for, it means that it is a binding contract. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that if you apply that way, and you can only apply to one school that way, and you get in, you have to go. Okay, so this should only be safe for schools like, oh my gosh, I love it, oh my God, NYU, please, please, or a school that you really, really would go to if you got in, and financially you could afford it and everything like that. So it does give you a little bit of a bumper. I call it extra credit, as long as you're in the wheelhouse of what they want out of an applicant, kind of data speaking wise. So if their applicants do have a 4.0, and let's say they want like a 1420 SAT score or whatever, and you're in that area, and I say that because the number of acceptances in the ED pool is double that of the regular pool. Okay, so I mean, think about it. You're guaranteeing the business. So I think some students are a little bit nervous to commit. But it's definitely an option. And what's nice about the early stuff is that you hear back earlier, and you hear back from the early action, early decision schools around the holiday time. So if we do have any broken hearts, or if we have I'm deferred, and we'll get to that fun word later, you still have then that second act, right? So that B list, so that second window of time in the regular decision to play with. So early action then is similar in nature with the deadline. So again, we're talking about November 1, we're talking about November 15th. I saw a comment, October 15th, what? That's a Southern thing. It's becoming increasingly popular around North Carolina, South Carolina schools, and it comes up so fast. So yeah, I'm so happy you're here. And so basically what's nice about early action is that it's non-binding. So the student doesn't have to go if they get in, okay? And you can apply to multiple schools like that. And I would say it's probably the most popular way. I would say Columbia's high school students apply if the option is there, because it just takes the stress of it all. You get it done early, you hear back early, you can be eligible for some scholarships if you apply earlier, which is nice. And that's also with that priority word means basically like a school can not have early action, but they might have, you know, what's called a priority deadline. And what that means is, hey, we normally, our regular deadline is January 1st, but if you apply by December 1st, then, you know, you could be eligible for some scholarship opportunities. Restrictive early action, and Ms. Ballestone, if you have anything to add on this, you can chime in because I know you have a better head than I. So some of the more kind of like elite, you know, IBs like Harvard, they will offer what's known as restrictive early action. So it means that your student can only apply to those kind of caliber schools, only one of them. So like they couldn't, you know, like if Yale had early action and Harvard had early action, you couldn't do both of them, okay? But if Harvard had restrictive early action and you also wanted to apply as a safety to the University of Delaware early action, that's okay. All right, so that's what restrictive early action means. Rolling is one of my favorite ways of applying to school. This is something that your seniors can do now if they're ready. So rolling means there's no true deadline. So let's say there's X amount of spaces open, as long as those colleges take students up until they fill up. So what's nice about rolling is that a lot of times they don't care about letters of recommendation, and they have students self-report their own grades and classes. So you're not waiting on anybody. So as long as you have the application and you do whatever they're asking you to do, you can hear back from the school in a few weeks. I would say like Pitt is kind of like a popular rolling school, and we really encourage our seniors to apply to at least one rolling school by Thanksgiving. It's a nice little like, you know, way, oh, I got it early, you know, just to feel good. So that's rolling. And then regular decision is basically the good old, hey, January 1st, February 1st, sometimes even March 1st. I know some of our Jersey schools go a little bit later. And those are, you know, the good thing about that is you have a little bit more time to get your ducks in a row. And a lot of times it's needed sometimes if our earlier window doesn't work out the way we want, we have it ready to go. The other thing about regular is that you may hear back like end of March, April. Okay, so that's a little bit stressful. And then that national college commitment day is May 1st. So there's not a lot of time to kind of make your decision and hear back from everybody. But it's still a great way to apply. And even last year, I feel like a lot of my students said it was the only option that the schools offered. So, you know, don't shy away from that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so again, as a refresher, the big moving pieces of the college application process, we have the application, we have the essay and supplements, right? We have the counselor letter, we have the transcript, we have the teacher letter. This is another piece that is back on the student, and that's the test scores. And I'll, in another slide, kind of talk about the different like gray areas with reporting test scores last year and this year. But it's so important to know that we as a school do not send test scores, okay? So whether you took the SAT or the ACT, it is the student's responsibility to go on College Board, the company that owns SAT, or ACT, other company, to request that your scores be sent to schools, okay? And I know like if you do it after, you know, in a certain amount of time, you get like up to 4 free reports. I think there's like $12 a school or something. But also, you know, more colleges are moving towards self-reporting test scores. So that's something that you definitely want to do that first because it's kind of a free opportunity. And then if they ask for official test scores, then you can go ahead and do that. But again, same thing with the teachers and the counselors. Please don't do it, you know, October 31st and be like, what? They didn't get my stuff. You know, because stuff happens, right? So there's always a human on the other end of that processing computer. So definitely allow yourself a buffer. Okay. Go ahead. All right, so in terms of test scores, okay, let me just start with SuperScore. Let me go before COVID brain. SuperScore, for those of you who don't know, it means the best of the best, okay? So let's say your senior took an SAT in September. They did great on their verbal, but not so hot on their math. And then they retook it in October and did much better on their math, but actually didn't do so great now on the verbal. So you would send both scores to the college, and the college would take your best verbal and your best math and put it together. So then ACT also started using that as well. But the biggest hot item off the press is this test optional thing. You know, COVID just made it so impossible for our students to actually sit to take a test, and that's not fair. So not only was most schools test optional, if not all, I think Florida was the one kind of being stubborn, but it's continuing for this year, most of the schools. And then I've even seen a lot of schools saying permanently. you know? So the biggest disclaimer I can say here is please, please, please go on the college admission website whenever you have decided, yes, I have my list of schools, because it is so insane how all these pieces of information differ from school to school. There's no way for the counselors to keep track of it. And even if I was an expert last year, could be a totally different game this year. And what I always tell my juniors and seniors, and my most successful students do this, have a Google Sheet, or if you're old school and have an Excel, whatever works for you, have all your schools, have a column for deadlines, have a column for Common App, or is it going to be coalition, or am I doing it right from the website? Am I doing early action? Am I doing regular? How many letters of rec do they want? All that stuff, okay? Because that will really just kind of, it's so overwhelming, right? All these pieces, and having it in one place is really powerful, okay? And one thing, fairtest.org is also a great website that's like growing, that will say all the test optional schools. And then something that is like super popular in California, wonder why, is test blind. So what test blind means is the colleges are not even looking at test scores. They don't trust them. They don't want them. Okay, so that's what it means by test blind. And I've even seen a couple of CUNY schools. It's like creeping, you know, so definitely look for that. Okay, next slide. And these are basically the outcomes of the college application process. So obviously, you know, we have yay, I get in, nay, I don't. Okay, so those are the kind of the easiest to process, not process, but you know what I mean. But another kind of popular and not kind of talked about outcome is being deferred or waitlisted. And this kind of hurts in a way. But there's hope. So deferred is basically what happens when your student applies either early action or early decision. They just aren't 100% sold on you yet. So they might be waiting on, like, you know, quarter 1 grades or quarter 1 and quarter 2 grades. They just want a little bit more information. Sometimes they might have the student write an essay, or, hey, you know, maybe you're taking another test. Can I see a test score? Something like that. So what they'll do is they'll put the student with the regular deadline pool. Okay, just to see, you know, the early birds are usually very shiny. It's very competitive. So sometimes they're like, let's just put them over here. Okay, so again, it's not a yes or not a no. And the same idea goes for waitlisted. So if you're waitlisted, that means you've applied regular decision. And at that point, they're kind of sort of seeing, like, playing the numbers game, like how many, you know, commitments they get by May 1st, how many spots they have open. I've had, you know, my first year here at Columbia, I had a girl that her #1 school was UC Berkeley. She was waitlisted, and it was, oh, so stressful. And she found out she got in on June 22nd. All right. So definitely have a plan B if you're deferred or waitlisted from a school. Okay. All right. Next slide. And this is the last piece. It's connected, but it's not kind of dependent on your student. The financial aid piece, the money piece, right? So the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, that opens October 1st, which is right around the corner. And that, you know, please do it as soon as it opens. And what that will do is it will ask the kind of like the information of your tax returns from the year of 2020. So we call it prior year. Okay. You know, as there was a note here, some colleges require it early, you know, even though it has like a national deadline for sometime later in the year. Your individual school you're applying to might say, oh no, you know, if you want to be offered, if eligible for financial aid, we need your FAFSA by November 15th. Okay, so again, so important to check those college websites. Similar to the FAFSA is something called the CSS profile. This is not required for all schools, and honestly, the FAFSA is not required. You want to do it because you want to see if you're eligible for any free money. But the CSS profile, if you decide to apply to any kind of selective schools or private institutions, they have a little bit more endowment money to give out. So the CSS profile will ask a little bit more detailed forensic questions. Also goes live October 1st. It's not free. I think it's like $36 or something, and it's owned by College Board, because what is it? But that's something that you'll have to kind of go and check out to see if that is required from your list of colleges as well. And please attend our financial aid night, which is next Wednesday, September 22nd, because financial aid, paying for college, that's a whole nother hour and change by itself that we can't dig into. So we'll have a lot of good answers there, hopefully, for you guys if you tune in. Okay, next slide. So this is an important slide too. And before I go there, because this is also a question I get a lot, all the moving pieces, it does not have to go all at once. Okay. You can have your student submit your application done. Then the counselor does the transcript and the letter. It does not have to, it's not practical for everything to go at once. So these just kind of this mental health side, if you will, just to take a breath. Okay, take a breath. You are not alone in this process. You have your student's counselor. You have all these great admins at the building. You have our SAC counselor, Mr. Lupus, who's there for mental health. We have social workers. We have all these great interns. Oh, it shouldn't like take away from the health of the student, and we see it all the time. So it is going to be okay. Everything is going to work out. It might not be the top choice school, and you might think in December, oh my gosh, worst thing ever. And then I've heard back from graduates like, thank goodness I didn't get into that school. So it will be okay. Everything will get where it needs to go, and you have us to lean on. Okay. So Ms. Balsone, that's the end of my spiel. Thank you. And now it's time for some Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Clyburn and Miss Mooney Chavez. That was awesome, especially after such a long day of talking, and that you were able to be coherent tonight was a small miracle, and to be wonderful presenters. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. And thank you to all of our counselors also. I hope I said that enough. They've been doing really an amazing job just getting the school year started and make sure everyone's all set. Okay, we are really excited to take your questions now. So we're all now looking at this chat. Thank you for all the thank yous. That's awesome. If a student is applying early decision, is it still suggested to do the CSS or FAFSA? So some private schools will require the CSS profile, so it's absolutely required. So you have to check with your specific college there. We do recommend that everyone fill out the FAFSA just to see if you're eligible. So yes, generally speaking, we encourage you to fill out all the financial aid forms. So one of our counselors, do you want to take this? They heard you can apply to 2 schools as early decision, and that if you don't get the first one, you can be considered for the second one. Is that true?
No. And it's unethical. Okay. So early decision is only one school. And please, parents, know that how you all talk to each other, we all talk to each other, college admissions all talk to each other. Okay. So I would never want to put my student in that position. Okay. So one school ED, despite the buzz. Okay. That's the way to go.
I do see that there's a question about ED2. And basically what ED2 is, it's like it's another sort of ED process after the first one has been completed, which, if Ms. Ballasone, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a way for you to be able to apply ED to another school if you didn't get into the first ED school of your choice.
Exactly. So the ED2 deadlines are usually around the same time as the regular decision deadlines in January, which gives you time to hear from your first choice school where you applied ED. And if you didn't get in, then you can submit your application to your second choice school, ED2, if they offer it, of course. Someone asked about the difference between early decision and early action. If either of you want to reiterate that.
Sure, I can take that. So early decision is binding. And so what that means is it's a school that the student feels really strongly about. They feel like it'll be a great fit. And if they are accepted by that institution, they have to attend. That's sort of the caveat with it, with an early decision application. And you can only apply to one school early decision. Early action is just another way for a student to apply before the regular decision deadline. It's non-binding, so students can apply to as many early action schools as they desire. And if they get in, then they are still in a position where they can make some decisions based off of other schools that they might be looking at, because it's non-binding.
Thank you. Questions about college visits. So right now, it seems like a lot of colleges are allowing in-person visits, not all colleges, but some. So it is a good idea to try to squeeze some of those in this fall, because who knows what's going to happen come winter. Some of the colleges may then go back on that and not be offering in-person tours on their campus. So if you are able to schedule and go out to any college tours this fall, that's a great idea. If you don't have the resources to go flying around the country, even just go take a tour of Rutgers and then go take a tour of Drew, just right nearby, colleges within half an hour of here, to get that sense of what a big huge state schools like versus a small liberal arts school. And just try to get your student out on a couple of college campuses, even if you can't go too far. But if you do have the resources and you're able to go visiting the schools you're considering, try to do it this fall. It's a good idea. Who knows what's going to happen come the winter. How to make an appointment with a counselor. Oh, sorry, Mr. Sanchez.
I was just going to say, just a reminder, if you are visiting a college, make sure you sign up and that you are registered with admissions so that they know how serious you are about looking at that college. I think that goes a lot. That goes far for them.
I have a
Definitely.
question. I don't know if I can be heard.
You can somehow, yes.
Oh, great. My name is Isabel Felix. What happens to let's say if I pull out my daughter to go look at the college, how does that count? How is that counted against her attendance days?
That's a great question. So seniors are allowed to have, is it 2 or 3, Mr. Sanchez?
Juniors and seniors are both allowed 3 days for college visits. It will say, I believe, unexcused, or I mean, then we will excuse it and actually put college visit. That's from the state of New Jersey. It's a mandate. You are allowed 3 visits a year.
Thank you.
So there's a question here about how to make an appointment with a counselor. So right now we're in kind of a funny time where, through September 24th is the add drop period where the counselors are trying to, get everyone set with their schedules for the year. You can, of course, email them to request an appointment, but we may not be able to schedule the appointment right away. And then right after that is when the counselors start their senior meetings. So that will be an hour-ish long meeting that you're going to get that you're able to call into, that your student's actually going to get, but you're welcome to Zoom in or Google Meet into the meeting. So that's probably going to be your best bet at getting that like long, detailed, private meeting for your student with the counselor in the next, 6 to 8 weeks. So right now, stay tuned because after the add drop period's over, after September 24th, the counselors will be publishing all of their senior meeting slots on their calendars, and the students will be able to click right on their calendar on the website and sign up for a senior meeting on there. There's a question about super scoring. So using your best verbal and then your best math score, even if they're on 2 different dates for the SAT. So some colleges super score, some don't. When you go to send your test scores on College Board, it'll tell you whether or not the schools you're sending to them will allow you to only send your top scores from different dates, or it may require you to send all your scores based on the school's own policy. A lot of schools do allow super scoring though.
Oh, and I just wanted to chime in. Dang it, these questions are just coming in. If you apply regular decision, then you change it to ED2 if you don't get into ED1? The answer is yes. I had a student do that last year. Also, I had a question about the teachers, kind of tips on how to get to, because the students haven't really been in class and all that stuff. I'll say this. One, we have the teacher survey also for the student to fill out. So we have a counselor survey, a parent survey, and the teacher survey. And that also is a nice reflective questionnaire for the student. Also, don't discount this virtual thing in terms of disconnection, because I was thinking about this today. I actually got closer to some students virtually than I didn't because, they're shy or they don't want to compete for the crowds to come wait for Miss Winnie Chavez. But I was able to have so many great Zooms and I think that went on, right, with our teachers and students, of course. So I think if the teacher feels they don't have much to say or something like that, I really believe that they'll make a connection with the student, almost like a little interview or a sit down and just trying to, get some more meat that way. Difference between parent survey and counselor survey. So the parent survey is questions that you answer for us, the guidance school counselors, to write. Okay, so it's like, talk to me about your son and daughter, adjectives, that kind of stuff. The counselor survey is what your student will answer for us. So that looks a lot more like I've been in NHS, I've been a lifeguard, that kind of thing. So you only have one survey to do. Your student has the counselor survey, and 2 to possibly 3 teacher surveys to do. Not a lot of questions, okay? But that's the difference.
There's a question here about if a student's applying for a January 1st deadline, will their senior grades be on their transcript? No. So the initial transcript that we send when the transcript is requested does not have grades from senior year on it. Students need to separately request if they want their first quarter grade sent or if they ultimately want their mid-year transcript sent, which has their first and second quarter grades on it. Mr. Sanchez, there's a question for you about parking for seniors. Is there a plan for more parking for seniors?
Are you sure that's for me?
Yes, I assigned it to you.
I'm teasing. Right now, we don't have parking for seniors officially. Unfortunately, our school buses had to be moved to that lot last year. And even there, we still had some damage from Hurricane Ida, or Tropical Storm Ida also really damaged the one field we were thinking about, which was behind the what's it called? The DPW, not the DPW, but the school's facilities area. So what that means is that students should be thinking about carpooling, and if they do carpool, I cannot officially say this, but since we're here, this isn't recorded, is it, Ms. Ballasone?
It's recording.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. But on the streets that are around the school, not Academy, not obviously Valley or Parker, but the other streets, I think if they park there, they'll be okay for the next few months. They should not be getting any tickets. So you could have that, my word on that. And if you do receive a ticket, you can just put it up and Columbia High School will pay for it. Or at the very least, Miss Ballasone will, because she's recorded this. But unfortunately, in all sincerity, we just don't have the parking this year because of the storm.
Go ahead.
Ms. Balsone, I want you to speak on 2 different topics that are always hot. And no, there's not like a great answer to this, but about like the ED, applying ED and the financial aid package, does it hurt the applicant to fill out the FAFSA or CSS if they are applying ED?
So this is one of those things where like if the tree fell in the forest, do we hear it? Like we'll never know. So people love to talk about this, of course, because no one will ever know if your financial aid package would have been different if you applied one way versus another. There's just no way to ever know. Yes, a lot of people think that if you apply early decision, you're penalized with financial aid because the college knows you're going to be enrolling and they don't need to be, fighting for you with financial aid packages. But any college you ask would absolutely refute that and say absolutely not. It has nothing to do with that. So I like to, I guess, believe them that financial aid is financial aid, and whatever you qualify for is there. But of course, we have to keep in mind that, they know they have you if you're applying early decision. So there's really no negotiating there. There's really no opportunity for a financial aid appeal. Sometimes our students like to send, a financial aid package from one school to another school and say, hey, can you match this? Like some of that stuff that happens in the spring, there's no opportunity for that.
And the other hot topic, and Clyburn, I know you have a good college admissions head as well. In terms of not submitting your test scores, one, how do we help students and families make that decision? Like, what's the benchmark of, oh, I don't know. Or for those who say, hey, it's test optional, I'm not going to send. Did we get any feedback from last year? Did it hurt or help kids? Or do we not know?
I think it's kind of all over the place. I think, in this balance one, maybe you might have a different perspective, but it seemed like it was kind of specific to schools. I don't know. There's not a good way to answer that question.
Yeah, and Mr. Clyburn went on like 5,000 webinars on his own time about college admissions since COVID. So, no one knows. It's something that everyone's talking about, and we all looked at each other last year after this first round of COVID admissions, and we all sat there with some of our cases that were surprising to us. And we thought, could there be a correlation here? Did it hurt to not send the test score? We all asked ourselves that. But to be honest, every year we kind of sit around looking at each other like, how did certain things happen? There's always things that we don't understand, and we never know what to point to really about it. And it's not just us, because our department, all of us, we love to like get on these, international high school counselor and Facebook pages and like hear what's happening with high schools and admission trends all over the world and all over the country. And everyone's asking the same questions, and just trying to compile data from last year, the first real COVID admissions round. Did it hurt to not send your test score? And there's just no definitive answer that came of it. So I like to think that if a college is not requiring the test score, then they're planning to evaluate you fairly, regardless of whether or not you send it. But for you personally to decide whether or not to send it, you look at score, and you see, okay, is my kid's test score at or higher than their average accepted test score from Columbia High School? If it's not, then I wouldn't send it. If it is, then I would send it. And you can also kind of tell looking at score, like if your test score is higher in a way than your GPA, right? So is your GPA like putting you in a better spot on these graphs than your test score? If so, then don't send the test score. Your GPA is going to speak for itself. But if the SAT is kind of like looking like an even better spot on the chart than your GPA, then definitely send it. It could help you.
There's a teacher letter rec question also. One, how do we gently nudge, or what do we do if we've asked the teacher and we haven't heard back and it's been a couple weeks? In person sometimes, and guys, don't forget, this is like crazy time for everybody. So definitely kind of maybe a ninth period, like, hey, Mr. the chat out, did you get my email? That I would do that. Gentle nudges and reminders. I've had experiences, and I know this is so stressful, but the teachers get it in. They get it in. But if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting any kind of response, or Ms. Balzan, what do you think? Different teacher at that point, if you're just kind of all the time?
School's open. We're here in person. So your students should go drop by the teacher's classroom at the end of the day, or, run to them in between periods or something and try to get them in person, just because if the teachers' inboxes look anything like our inboxes, they're probably still trying to answer emails from 3 weeks ago. So, so they might just be totally slammed right now and maybe even missed the email because, the inbox situation is pretty crazy right now. So I would definitely recommend like an in-person drop by at this point as the next step.
And how do they pick what teacher to ask? Sometimes it is on the college's actual website. We'll have a disclaimer. We only want, letters from junior or senior teachers, or we only want core content teachers. You definitely need to check those websites. I can't see it being so restrictive as of late, just because given don't forget, this is a nationwide situation. It wasn't a New Jersey situation, even though it felt like it sometimes. But I also think that there was a great question like, well, what if, my student didn't have the best grade in the class? It's really about the journey. It's about, you would be surprised. And to be honest, if a teacher can't write or won't feel it will do justice for the student, they're going to be honest about that. Okay, so that also can happen. I'm just putting SAT dates and deadlines here in the chat.
Yes, and thank you, everybody. We no longer provide class ranks, so students would just write, my high school does not rank.
And I think colleges have been, from what I've seen and some of the people I've talked to, they're trying to give everyone grace, just as, because things have been obviously very different. So in years past, where the gold standard might have been from a junior year teacher, obviously these last 19 months have been very different than what we've experienced before. So I think that you're going to see a little bit more flexibility on the part of some of the schools to certainly look at those sophomore teacher letters of recommendation. But as Ms. Balason said before, you just want to make sure that for each individual school, that you understand specifically what they want, so that the student knows how to approach the situation for the schools that they're applying to.
So there's a question. That's a great point, Brian. There's a question about can we provide the decile ranking to students? And I'm not sure if that would help. I mean, wouldn't the scattergram itself be able to help students really know where they would be going to college based on, let's say, their SAT scores, if they took SATs, their GPA, and things like that? Now, I know Score is a new product, that platform that we have, so I don't know if it has the historical data, Ms. Balisone, or
Yeah, no,
Pam?
it has all of our historical data. So it's really the best tool to
Well,
use.
that's the best way of then looking for the college, and then therefore that ranking really isn't necessary.
Yeah, and I know what the parents are asking on here. I understand what they're saying. Like some schools may say on their website, like we look for kids from the top 10% of your class, you know? So just to kind of gauge there. But I mean, it's not a secret. Like to let everyone know for the past couple of years, the top half of the senior class has had over a 4.0. So students in the middle of the class had a 4.0. Half the class had over a 4.0 up until the 5.03 or whatever happens every year with the with the highest GPA. So just to give you some perspective, if that helps at all, to be in at the top of the class at Columbia High School, you really, have to be close to a 5.0, which is, straight A pluses in the highest level courses you ever could have chosen here, always. Someone asked a logistical question about how do you put a college under thinking about in Score, and I think it's because you probably logged into your parent account, which is awesome. And what parents can do is suggest schools on there. That's all you can do is suggest to your student, and then on the student side, that's where you see the interest, thinking about applying to and applied. The parent can't see that through their own account. Yeah, so the data in Score is self-reported from a student, so they have to let us know of all the schools they applied to, where did they get in, where didn't they get in, and that's what you're seeing in Score.
And I thank you, Ms. Balisone, and the counselors, because I know you made an incredible effort last year to really, a new trend, to really have those exit meetings with students. So it wasn't just, where they applied, but where they're going. I think for the first time in several years that occurred. So thank you very much for making sure that data is as accurate as possible.
Oh, a good question, Ms. Balisone. If a college event is full on Score, what can we do?
So the only reason why it would be full is because the college representative indicated a cap. So, I don't know how to explain this. Like, of course, we coordinate them coming and we make the schedule and then we host them and everything like that. But it's really like their rules, right? They come with their own rules of how many students they're willing to have in the space, and things like that. So depending on the situation, we could of course reach out to the admission counselor and ask them, if we can open it up, or we can ask them to come for a second visit. We can definitely look that up. So if you don't mind, if there's a school that's closed that you really want to go to, you can definitely shoot me or the amazing Liz Petrosha, who pretty much runs the counseling center. You could send either of us a little email, and we can maybe reach out to the admissions counselor, and see if it's possible to get some expanded offerings there. Principal Sanchez, there's questions about the final grades regarding the discussion, about the recalculation with the floor grade. That's what people are asking about on here.
I don't know where we are, but so at the end of the day, I guess I can't see where we are with the questions. I could just tell you that last year's grades as a junior, you will see the final grades being averaged, and that's what the transcript says, right? The final year of the junior schedule, same thing as the final grade from sophomore year and freshman year. So we did change the way we averaged the marking periods. I think we fixed what was perhaps not the strongest way of doing it. And that's what is there. And the same thing would happen for your child at the end of this year. But of course, they'll be accepted to college based on their first marking period grades or based on their semester grades. So I'm not sure, Ms. Balson, I don't see the actual question. If you can just,
It says, how will the school recalculate final grades?
oh, the final grades have already been calculated for junior year. The change that I made was made for junior year school. And so that's already been done. And so that's how it will be moving forward. There was a question I did see about, is it okay to ask a senior teacher, for a letter of recommendation? I've taught students for many years, junior students and senior students, and most of my students would always ask their junior English teacher or their social studies teacher. But I taught a very popular senior AP elective, and by the time some of my students were writing that process, I may have had them in a club as well. And so I wrote many senior recommendation letters. It is true, obviously, the junior year teacher has a lot more anecdotes that they could put in that letter of recommendation. But I think if your child has a great connection with the senior year teacher who can attest to the students seriousness and the rigor of the class, there's nothing wrong with that.
And a question about when we'll do some more college app workshops, which we did before school started. It was great. And then we are going to be planning more. We're just in the process of planning it right now. So just stay tuned, and we'll be letting everyone know through our announcements on our website and the class of 2022 webpage too. It'll be on our calendar as well. All right. We'll wait about another minute or so to see if there's any last questions, and then I think we'll be getting ready to wrap up.
I saw a question, like if a senior has like a newer counselor, can they have a meeting before their senior meeting?
Senior meetings are the first thing that happens for anyone. That's the first thing that happens. So there is no chance to have a meeting before then, because that'll be the first thing that happens is the senior meetings. They'll start, within the next couple of weeks.
And please don't feel like the senior meetings are one and done. Obviously we have to get through everyone, but sometimes it takes more than one meeting to really nitpick everything. So yeah, don't feel like you're gonna be shortchanged.
Of course.
Where can a parent get a transcript if they need it? Power School? Is it on Power School right now or no?
So to submit the current transcript, so there is a copy of the transcript right now under e-documents. It was the transcript in June that was finalized. So if you did any summer courses or any summer programming, that's not reflected on there. We will be uploading a more updated version of the transcript at the end of the add drop period. We can't do it until the end of the add drop period because it does show work in progress on there. It does show the student's schedule. So we wouldn't want it to be, again, outdated if your child makes a schedule change. So we'll be re-updating that at the end of the add drop period after September 24th. Questions about gap years. We do have a lot of students who plan gap years, especially since, the past couple of years. And we do recommend that the students still go through the college process with their counselor this year because a lot of gap year programs actually require that a student has deferred admission to a college, which means that they've decided where they want to go and they've just let the college know, hey, I'm not going to come in September. I'm going to come next September because I'm going to do a gap year. A lot of structured gap year programs require that in order to come to their program. So definitely still go through the college process. And this way also, if your student changes their mind and they decide they do end up wanting to go to college, they at least have some options.
Ms. B, what's the easiest way to find the scattergrams from the parent login?
Honestly, I'd have to be looking at a parent's account right now off the top of my head. I know I've looked before at a parent's account, but I always need a little bit of a reminder there since it does look very different from what we're able to see and what students see. So I will look into that tomorrow, and you can feel free to email me or your student school counselor, and we'll have that answer for you from our SCORE folks. We can ask them how that works if you're unable to find it. And yes, there was a lot of information tonight, so it's a lot to process. It's okay if you kind of felt like it went right over your head. That's okay. We're going to post this so you can rewatch the whole recording if you want to. You could just look through the slides. Or if this was just too much for you, you can just wait for your child's senior meeting. You can call into that and be able to just kind of do it at your own pace and specifically about your own child. So we hope that, you know, something struck you tonight and you found it helpful. But again, we just don't want anything to cause more stress. And we know that this is a lot. So just know that we're here to kind of guide you through every step of the way and kind of meet your student where they are. Thank you so much, Mr. Clyburn, Ms. Mooney Chavez, and Principal Sanchez for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. It was great. And thanks everybody for logging on. Hope you found it helpful.
Thank
Great
you.
job, Allison. Great job, team.
Yay, seniors.
Good job.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.